Hello, and welcome to Mental Health Matters. I'm your host, Liz Lang. Each week on this podcast, we will break down various aspects of mental health. We are so excited you're here and hope you enjoy this week's episode. Hey guys, Liz Lang here with Jeremiah and Selena from Core Connection. And this week we are going to get into navigating teen dating, just in time for Valentine's Day, which is coming up tomorrow, in case anybody wasn't aware. So I feel like this is a pretty appropriate topic and an important one because dating is a really important part of teen culture and just social development, and also a really important part of emotional development. And parents can have a lot of anxiety about this. My dad was probably one of those. I am convinced that it completely freaked my dad out. And that might be another interesting topic, why dads seem to be more scared of their daughters dating than their sons. And maybe moms are more scared of their sons dating. I don't know, but I just remember this really freaked my dad out. And I think there could just be some different cultural issues, but either way, or hopefully it's something that every kid is going to experience. And some kids experience it earlier than others. So one of the things that I think we should probably start off with talking about, because where it starts is parents are going to model the behavior. Parents are going to set the tone for what dating looks like, what healthy relationships look like, and kind of how this is going to go. So tell me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it is an important topic, Liz, and it is very scary for parents when they start considering their teens dating and being involved in that portion of life. And I do like that you mentioned the modeling of parents. And that is really a critical component when we look at how our children develop and look at and view dating is what do mom and dad do? How do they interact with one another? What's their relationship like? And that's oftentimes what our children will follow is what we're modeling.
Yeah. And, every family is going to look different. And I'm not going to say there's one single right way to model behavior. My family, we're very affectionate. Physical touch is my primary love language. And so Curtis and I like to be physically affectionate, and I love to be physically affectionate with my kids. And, even sometimes I have to check that and curb that with my youngest, who isn't as much into the physical affection. And so sometimes I want to give him a hug or a kiss, and he'll be like, no kisses. And he's also developed this recent weird fear of lipstick, which is just kind of funny. He's like, are you wearing, every Sunday, because I usually only wear makeup on Sundays, and I'll be like, do you have lipstick on? And if I do, he's like, don't come near me. Like he's going to catch cooties or something. It's really funny. That's this bizarre. Yeah, this bizarre. Great. I know, this bizarre thing with lipstick. But again, this is where my kids are learning about relationships. And my kids don't think it's gross to see mom and dad hugging and kissing because it's normal for us. It's normal for them to see mom and dad being affectionate. And if that's not the way you are as a couple, that's fine. It's okay if physical affection or physical touch isn't the primary way you show love and connection with your spouse. I think what's important is if you are finding ways to connect, or, maybe your mom and dad are a really good team and they're on the same side and they learn to resolve conflict in a constructive manner, right? Those are all good things good behavior that we can be modeling for our children.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody's different, and that's great. That's what makes the world go around. But the important piece is really the relationship modeling in healthy and appropriate manners that your children get to see and experience between mom and dad.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about young kids. And Curtis and I have experienced this with both of our two children, where in around, I don't know, somewhere between first and third grade, they're like, I have a boyfriend. And we're like, oh, okay. And with our oldest, it was really sweet because she's like, I don't want to kiss him. I just want to dance with him. And that made me so happy as a mom. I'm like, oh, but it was a great teaching opportunity for Curtis and I to say, okay, well, here's how mommy and daddy dance because we're married. But here's how we danced before we got married. And so we showed her how you can appropriately dance with the boy and leaving distance. And it was a really good teaching opportunity. And so that's another great takeaway another just great thing is looking for opportunities to teach kids. And so, but I want to get your thoughts on this because some parents might think, oh, first, second, third grade, that's way too young for them to have a boyfriend. And so, I mean, I guess I want to hear kind of what your thoughts are. I mean, because Curtis and I kind of just took it as an opportunity to teach of, you know, it means a lot to kiss somebody. When you kiss somebody on the lips, like that means something. And we give each other kisses because we're family and we love each other. And so, you know, again, it was a teaching opportunity. So I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are on a 7-year-old who has a boyfriend or a girlfriend.
It's way too young.
It's way too young.
No, it really is. But I think you're on the right track, Liz. And it is definitely just an opportunity to teach and to understand. It is kind of cute and it's fun as long as, you know, things are appropriate, because there are times that things go the wrong direction. Even at that young age, if they've been exposed to certain types of things, they can sometimes not understand what those relationships look like. But typically when you're looking at elementary school kids saying they have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, it's pretty short-lived and it's a crush and they don't even know what that means. And, you know, you just use that like you did as a time to teach and understand and help them learn boundaries and appropriate behaviors and things of that nature.
I love this. So I think because Valentine's is right now, this is a hot topic in our house right now.
Yes.
There's lots of crushes and Valentine talk going on in our house. And part of me inside's like freaking out about it. Like, what are these kids doing? They're too young. But when they've approached me with, they're going to ask someone or someone's asked them about being their Valentine, I have to just internally like, don't freak out. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, that's so exciting. It's so great to have somebody like you. That feels good, right?
Yep.
And so, Liz, you saying a teaching opportunity, of course, 100% teaching opportunities and asking them questions and showing them and modeling for them what is appropriate and what isn't appropriate, depending on their age and what you decide as a family, of course. But I just think that it's important to understand that, of course, they're excited about this. Of course, they like somebody. It feels good. It's exciting. And they really don't understand at the full level of what it is.
No.
It's just like somebody said they like me. It makes me feel good. Or as my 10-year-old said, my stomach just feels all weird when she talks to me.
Which is adorable.
Which is awesome, right? It's exciting to have that. So, but just setting those boundaries too, of course, for the age of what is okay and what isn't. We're not going to go out on dates, but of course, like that's great. You want to buy her a Valentine? That's awesome. Tell her you think she's cute. Wonderful. That's exciting things. Because then it helps to not have that shame when they have those feelings that are normal and natural that come to us. And so being careful of how our response is of controlling our fear when they tell us, that we respond in a way that is exciting and is encouraging of those natural feelings that they have.
Well, Selena, what happens if you do freak out? Like, why is that so important not to freak out? And why is it important the way we react?
I think it just comes back to them feeling like they're wrong for having those feelings.
Yeah, it's going to create shame. And then when we create shame, guess who's never going to tell you that they like somebody again? That child. And so having that open conversation allows future conversation as children age and move into the adolescent stage where dating becomes more real dating. Then we can have more open conversations and we've built trust with that child.
And if you have responded in a way that is freaking out, because that's normal and natural for us to respond that way.
Yes.
Yep.
I think it's okay too to just have an open conversation with your child and just say, you know, I'm really sorry. Mom was just really scared. I've never experienced this before. I don't know how to handle this, but I've thought about it. And then you can have that conversation of what you want to say.
Yeah,
definitely.
And because I was going to say that was my reaction when I was younger. I did not tell my parents. And I remembered in like 7th or 8th grade trying to have a boyfriend or something like that. Or there was a guy that I liked and he liked me. And I was old enough that it meant something more than just like, you know, a 3rd grade relationship. And I was terrified my parents were going to find out, and I didn't want to talk to them about it, and, and all of this kind of stuff. And in fact, I remember I had a friend who liked the same boy I did, and she went and told my mom so that we would break up. Just like,
nice.
Yeah.
I was in the 3rd grade when I had my first girlfriend, and we broke up because my sister told me that she didn't like the girl. And so I broke up with her.
You're mean.
I had no idea what was going on.
I know. And so, but family sets a huge tone. And,
it does.
And I remember even in high school having crushes on my brother's friends, and he hated it. And it drove him crazy, right? And so, siblings and family, it sets that important tone. And, obviously, obviously that didn't continue, right? I mean, your sister wasn't still involved in your dating life once you were in high school. But I mean, I like that your sister was involved, and that she was involved in your life, and that she had an opinion of who you hang out with and who your friends are. And that's, I think, another way to look at it at a young age is it's just forming friendships. And if you assign a huge, big meaning to it, they will. But if you just, like, as Selena said, it's just cute and it's fun to have someone like you and to like someone back. If you just assign what the meaning you give to it is the meaning they're going to give to it. And this also leads into the idea of early on, when they go into school, establishing what are our family values, what are our boundaries around dating and relationships and what that looks like. My parents had pretty strict boundaries of you did not date until you were 16. And, I can't say I really stuck to that very well. For almost an entire year, this guy was not my boyfriend. We were just friends. We were dating as much as we could be dating we didn't even have cell phones. And so we talked on the phone. Like, our relationship was mainly on the phone, but we talked like every day. And, again, and I think things are kind of changing and things are evolving. I feel like kids are starting to date younger and younger. So I think it is important to just establish, what age are you okay with? What is the first date going to look like? Do you want to meet the person? I think that is absolutely a fair boundary. We had a really fun conversation last week post-recording about just some of the different foibles that we've all experienced with dating and kids. And it was really fun. But that was I think one thing that we all came to agree on is it is absolutely reasonable to meet whoever your children are dating. That's not an unfair boundary and unfair expectation to set at all.
Yeah, the boundaries are something that mom and dad, or, if you're in a single parent home, that whatever parent really needs to define at a pretty early stage before those things start coming up, so that children understand what's expected and how to go about that. And the boundaries are more inclusive than just, hey, you can't date till you're 16 or 17 or whatever age you decide, or things of that nature, but understanding curfews and what the date looks like. Are we allowing them to go on dates, just 2 people, a boy and a girl or whatever? Or are we going to be more persistent on group dating and things like that? So that becomes really important to understand what your boundaries are and where you're comfortable. And you got to remember, like, your responsibility as a parent in this dating thing is to guide and direct and to keep safe. Your children, they're going to choose who they're going to date. Boy, we sure wish that there were still arranged marriages sometimes, but it's not the case, right? And probably good that it's not. But, just understanding what those boundaries are becomes critical as kids move into that stage of life.
And when we're talking about helping and guiding them, if we can have them be involved in those decision making, obviously, if your kids are younger and you're setting that out, that might not be realistic. But as they start dating and getting in their teens, letting them have a say or explaining what their wants or desires are within that, or having those open conversations of why do we want you to go on a group date? Why do you think it's better for you to be on a group date and not just single with somebody of the opposite sex? Why, so having those conversations to help them to be included in those decisions, or understanding why we have the boundaries that we do, because they haven't had those experiences in life to teach them those things that we have, right? And so we're always looking for opportunities for them to learn and grow. So giving them that independence. So setting those boundaries, but finding ways that they can have that independence and make those choices where it's appropriate.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I'll say my first date was with my dad. And that was intentional because he set the tone and he wanted to show me what a date looks like, like the tone that he set. And, Curtis does that with our girls. He does daddy daughter dates, and I go on mom and son dates. And so hopefully we're showing our kids from a young age, and they're seeing us go on dates. It is as hard as it can be for parents to leave young kids. It is good to leave your young kids and go on a date, because obviously it's good for the relationship, but it's also good for the kids to see mom and dad are still continuing to date each other. And, this is what a healthy and normal relationship looks like. And you can talk about the things that you do. Oh, come home. Yeah, we had this great time at dinner, and we tried this weird bizarre food and we both hated it, but it was really fun. And just sharing experiences like that, and so that kids understand this is how it works on a date. And or this awful thing happened and things went totally wrong, but we just tried to make the best out of it anyways.
Yeah, I really love the idea of dads taking their girls on dates and helping them, kind of learn what that process looks like. And and it's a great opportunity for dads to kind of talk through how they would expect a boy to treat their daughter and what's okay, what's not okay. Maybe one of the funner things for me to talk about is in today's day and age, we see these dates happening where a boy shows up at the house, sends a text and says, "I'm here, come out." And I've always told my girls, if a boy does that, I'll be meeting him out at his car and dismissing him and sending him on his way. He's got to be man enough to come to the door, knock on the door, and get you that way. So anyway, there's a lot of different things that surround that we can talk about. But the parents taking children on date, again, you're modeling, right? You're showing what it looks like, how it looks, and it's such a great opportunity. And I'm telling you right now, especially for dads, I don't know so much about sons and moms, but for dads, your daughters will eat that up. They'll eat it up in a second. They would just love to go on a date with daddy and spend some time with him, whatever that can look like.
Yeah, absolutely. And I still have this vivid memory of my dad taking my brothers fishing, and I begged so hard to go. And I wanted so much to go, and my dad's like, "No." He's like, we're going to go do something. We'll go to something else. I don't even remember how long it took. I just remember getting to go out and do something with just dad, right? So like he took the boys out to go on a fishing trip, and which is important too, right? He had some quality father-son time, but he made it a point to take me out as well. And I was really young. Like I was probably like 3, and I still remember that. And so, yeah, kids, they remember these things and they're important. So let's talk about dating in terms of social media and how that can work. And we've done an entire episode on social media and how some of the dangers of social media, and hopefully you don't have teens on dating sites. I don't think that's legal, nor should it be, because that sounds like a recipe for disaster. But the dating world has changed a little bit because of social media and because so many kids have cell phones. So I think that's another important topic to discuss, in establishing boundaries of texting, like what kind of text that you're sending to your boyfriend or your girlfriend or your friends in general, and just talking about privacy and consent and that kind of stuff. It's a great opportunity to talk about that with teens.
Yeah, I don't think I would want my kids on any dating apps.
Right.
Certainly, once they move more into that adult realm, then that's a different story. And as much as I don't maybe like to admit that is the way a lot of people are meeting today, and it's okay. And there's extra precautions I don't think we'll get into in this podcast that you can take to remain safe in those settings so that we don't end up in trouble. But utilizing technology and social media in the realm of dating is definitely an important topic. And I think the biggest key is helping your children understand that once you hit send or upload or whatever on any image, no matter what you do, it's permanent. It doesn't go away. You might delete it, but it exists somewhere. That's why we want to be careful about, what we send and how we send it to others, especially in today's world. We end up with a lot of people sending, nude pictures or things like that. And so kind of teaching your children the dangers of that, and that like it doesn't ever get deleted. Once you've sent it, it's out of your hands now. And we see this happen often. A young girl sends nude pics to her boyfriend because he requests them. They break up, and then he plasters them all over whatever, and they're everywhere for the world to see. And that wasn't her intent. And it's really painful and hurtful and embarrassing. And so really walking kids through like the consequences of their decisions when it comes to dating becomes important. And of course, the safety is such a big thing. There's some rough people out there in the world that aren't always what we wish they would be. And so making sure that we help them understand, safety, boundaries, and consent when it comes to sexual behaviors and things of that nature certainly becomes critical to teach and to understand.
Yeah. And, whatever your morals are in that area, right? Whatever boundaries you set for your kids. I mean, like we had a pretty hard and fast rule. I mean, well, and this was a rule for me until I got married, is that boys were not allowed in my room, period. And again, that stems from their belief of abstinence before marriage. And they, obviously pass that value on to me. And if that's the way you want to go, then, obviously that's a major role we have as parents to pass on our values. But if you have different values around sex and sexuality, and if you're more free, it's still so important to teach this idea of what sexuality means and healthy sexuality, and this idea of consent and how to help your kids protect each other. And when you say no, no means no, and helping kids to understand that and to express that. And that also is another thing that starts at a young age. I teach my kids that if somebody says, stop touching me or something like that, and they don't listen, I jump on them and I say, no, when somebody asks you to take their hands off of you, you listen. And I try to stress that the importance of body boundaries, because it creates safety and it helps kids to understand, even at a young age, the idea of consent and what consent is.
Yeah, and make no mistake about it, even if your morals and standards are teaching abstinence before marriage, kids are going to explore, they're going to do things.
Yeah.
And so helping them understand the value of consent, the importance of it, and boundaries and what that means does become really, really important. And we hold those same values in our home. We teach that, but we also teach that no matter what stage you're at in any relationship, even if it's marriage, no is still no. Mm-hmm. And regardless of where you're at or what you're doing or how far things have gone, when a partner says to stop, you have to stop. And that's just a respect thing and something that you got to understand. And I love the idea of teaching kids like boundaries about their bodies and physical touch and having that ability to set their own boundaries of what they want and what they don't want.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like that's an ongoing conversation for you and in your home. And when you're talking about that, you're not necessarily teaching them about dating at that point, but because that's normal and natural in your conversation every day and all the time, then that's just going to be natural when you take it to the next step. Like, hey, now that you're dating, this is the same concept. This is the same rules. Still have those body boundaries. So that's awesome to keep continuing to have those natural everyday conversations at their level and what they're experiencing. So as they get older and then you have the dating and those sorts of things, then those conversations are just going to become natural and not like let's sit down and talk about this, that now that you're dating. It's just going to be your normal conversation. It's going to be normal and natural to them of understanding those concepts.
Yeah, which is like what we talked about a couple weeks ago with talking to kids about sexuality, is the idea that, I am in control of my body and I get to be in charge of who touches it and who sees it and when and where. And so, that's such an important concept for young kids to understand, especially as they're, like we mentioned, as they're going to doctor's appointments and as doctors need to do physical exams and all of that stuff. And just, it all ties in and it all comes together to hopefully in the end that your child will eventually enter a fulfilling, long-term, healthy, happy relationship. Because I think that's our goal for our children, is to have long-term fulfillment in whatever they choose. And, for some people, marriage doesn't come when they want it to, but you can still have really healthy and meaningful relationship through friends. And even if it's not in necessarily like a relationship, like an intimate relationship, there can still be healthy boundaries within just friendships. And it all applies to any kind of social situation and social circles.
Yeah. And I wanted to jump back real quick on something you said when you were talking about the need for them to, translate that personal boundary into the dating world. It's also important that we're teaching our children that others have that same capacity and ability to set their own boundaries. And so if their boundaries are different than yours, you still respect their boundaries, whatever those are, as you're dating, and making sure that we provide that same respect to those we're in relationships with.
Yeah, absolutely. Curtis and I, when we were dating and even we were engaged, we didn't kiss much in front of people. And that was just, that was kind of a personal boundary that we were uncomfortable with. And I'm talking about like more than just like a quick peck on the cheek, but even that we didn't really display a whole lot. And that was something that we were both comfortable with. And if you're dating someone and if they're not comfortable with a lot of public displays of affection, respect that. If they're comfortable holding hands in public, that's fine, but maybe they're not comfortable putting their arms around you in public. And that's really important to respect. And it's warrants a conversation and a discussion. And you can even go into try to understand their point of view, understand why they don't like that, why they're not uncomfortable, and don't understand to try to change their mind, right? Or don't come at it from, oh, I want to know so I can change your mind about it. Try to understand because I want to understand your emotional world and why you feel this way. That's a great way to build connections.
Yeah, definitely.
So with dating comes the potential for toxic or unhealthy relationships. And so that's something that I really want to touch on and to look for the warning signs. And I have a feeling I know what Jeremiah is going to say in this instance, that if you do ever have a teenager who ends up in a situation in a toxic or abusive or an unhealthy relationship, they're going to need some professional counseling. And I think we can all agree with that statement. But we as parents need to be aware of the warning signs in those instances.
Yeah, and teaching your kids the warning signs, but as parents, again, it's our responsibility to keep them safe. So
yeah,
we're looking at any type of relationship that tries to draw your child away from family, from friends, any type of relationship that might try and persuade to maybe abandon dreams and desires, any type of relationship that appears controlling and not mutually respectful. There's a lot of different warning signs. I don't think that I could cover them all just sitting here from the top of my head. But, as a parent, we need to be aware and we need to teach our children as they're starting to enter this dating phase, like what kinds of things do we look for? And one of the ways we do that is we start with our children when they're young and help them to develop criteria for the type of people that they want to date. What kind of person would you want to be in a long-term relationship with? What kind of characteristics do they possess? What kind of things are a no-go for you? What kind of things would you just say, absolutely not, I don't want anybody that has anything to do with this or that? And understanding what that is, and then helping them to stay true to those boundaries that they set for themselves. But definitely looking for those warning signs. And there may come a time where you have to get involved and protect your children, because it becomes difficult when they get into an unhealthy relationship, because the reality is they do have feelings for that other person. They care about them. They might think that they love them. I guess I would question whether they do or they don't. That's maybe up for discussion. But sometimes as a parent, we've got to get involved, and sometimes we have to take drastic measures, which can be scary too. But be certain that you can navigate through that. And there's a lot of help and resources out there if we do get into those troubling situations.
Mm-hmm. And if there is ever instance of abuse of any sort, physical, sexual abuse, it is absolutely appropriate to involve law enforcement, and, don't hesitate to do that. And I think that's another area that can get kind of muddled with, in terms of abuse and consent. And I think that can be really difficult. And I think that's why it's so important to talk to your kids about consent and about what it looks like. So neither of them gets in a situation of regret or an instance of, I feel like I was taken advantage of. And so hopefully you can help your kids avoid those types of situations. But yeah, certainly I think if you're aware enough of your child's world, and if you're aware of who their friends are, and this is why it's important to meet the people that your kids are dating, is because you'll be able to pick up on some of those red flags of, this person comes off as very controlling, and you can kind of talk about that and just navigate those waters more if you're involved.
Yeah, being involved is certainly a key, and having the opportunity to have those they're dating in your home becomes important, and having conversations with those young men or young women who are dating your children just can give you a lot of insight into their lives and the way they are that you're not going to get coming from your own children. They're not going to express so many of those things to you. So definitely being involved gives you access to the potential flags.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so with dating also comes the potential, or the very, very likely scenario of breakups. And that's kind of going to be next week's topic. So we're going to get into rejection and failure. And so we will obviously touch more on when relationships end, but we're also going to talk about other types of rejection, or when kids do fail, because that's a big part of life and an important thing to help our kids through from an early age. So we will see you all next week. Have a question? How about a topic you'd like us to cover? Send us an email at mentalhealthpod21@gmail.com.